A study published this month in the journal Science Advances says the two largest branches of life on Earth, bacteria and archaea, did not both descend from a single fully formed ancestor. According to the researchers, each branch crossed the line from a not yet independent protocell into a true, self-sufficient living cell separately, after they had already split apart. Their shared ancestor, known as LUCA, the last universal common ancestor, was running on a patchwork system. About half of its chemistry ran on enzymes, and the other half leaned on raw metal catalysts borrowed straight from its environment. No protein required. Bacteria and archaea, the study argues, each finished building a complete cell on their own, independently inventing separate enzymes to solve the exact same chemical problems. If that holds up, it challenges one of biology's oldest working assumptions, that every living thing traces back to one single moment life truly began. You are about to see what the researchers actually measured to make that case, and where the phrase "two origins of life" stops meaning what the headline makes it sound like. A team at the Institute of Molecular Evolution at Heinrich Heine University in Dusseldorf did not dig up a fossil or run a chemistry experiment in a flask. They compared genomes. Specifically, they traced the evolutionary history of 420 core metabolic reactions, the basic chemical steps that keep a cell alive, across modern bacteria and modern archaea. For each reaction, they asked a simple question: does the enzyme that performs it in bacteria share a common ancestor with the enzyme that performs the same reaction in archaea? Or did the two lineages arrive at different molecular solutions independently? Reconstructing LUCA this way showed it had working enzymes for only about half of those 420 reactions. The rest of its chemistry depended on metals and minerals doing the catalytic work directly. A chemistry style closer to what you would find in a hydrothermal vent than inside a modern cell. That gap, an ancestor that was only half equipped with enzymes, is the starting point for everything the study concludes next. It means LUCA itself was not yet a fully self-sufficient cell by modern standards. Here is the key piece of evidence. For many of the reactions, LUCA could not yet run on enzymes. Bacteria and archaea both eventually evolved one, covering processes like alanine production, the shikimate pathway, and riboflavin synthesis. But when the researchers compared those enzymes structurally, the bacterial and archaeal versions frequently turned out to be unrelated proteins, built from different molecular scaffolds, not variations on a shared design. If bacteria and archaea had inherited a finished enzyme from LUCA, you would expect their versions to look like cousins. Instead, in case after case, they looked like two independent answers to the same homework problem. In evolutionary biology, that pattern is the signature of convergent invention, not shared inheritance. The researcher's summary line captures it precisely. One origin of the genetic code, but two origins of life. The genetic code itself, the DNA to protein instruction system, was already shared before the split. What was not shared, in this account, was the final assembly of a complete, self-sufficient cell. That step, they argue, happened on two separate occasions, in two separate lineages, after they had already gone their own ways. It is worth being precise about what this study is not saying, because the headline version invites a much bigger claim than the data supports. It is not saying non-living chemicals spontaneously assembled into life twice, in two separate puddles or vents. From scratch, LUCA already existed as a shared starting point, already carrying the same genetic code every living thing uses today. The claim is narrower and more technical. The transition from that shared, only half-equipped ancestor into a fully autonomous, self-sufficient cell happened independently in the lineage that became bacteria and, separately, in the lineage that became archaea. Think of it less like two lightning strikes creating life from nothing, and more like two separate teams finishing the same unfinished building using different blueprints, after inheriting the same foundation. That is a genuinely significant claim about how cellular life was completed. It is a different, much smaller claim than life on Earth starting over from zero on two occasions. Confusing the two is exactly the kind of gap between a real finding and its headline that is worth catching before you repeat it. This entire picture is reconstructed, not observed. LUCA lived somewhere around 4 billion years ago. Nothing from that era survived to be examined directly. No fossil cell, no preserved enzyme. Everything here comes from comparing the genes of organisms alive today and modeling backward. A method that depends on assumptions about mutation rates and how reliably you can tell a truly independent enzyme from one that changed so much over billions of years it merely looks unrelated. Structural similarity is not always obvious after that much evolutionary distance. And getting that call wrong in either direction changes the conclusion. The paper was published on August 5th, which means at the time of this recording it is roughly a week old. Has not had time to be replicated by outside teams, and has not yet absorbed the pushback that reshapes most bold origin of life claims within a year or two. This is also a field with a track record of confident conclusions later getting revised as new methods or new microorganisms are discovered. None of that means the study is wrong. It means treat two origins of life as a serious, well-argued hypothesis from one research group, not yet a settled fact of biology. The underlying data here is signal. 420 metabolic reactions traced across two domains of life. A shared ancestor shown to be running on borrowed minerals for half its chemistry. And a repeated pattern of structurally unrelated enzymes solving the same problems in bacteria. Versus archaea. That is a careful, specific, falsifiable piece of evolutionary detective work. Published in a real peer-reviewed journal by researchers whose whole careers are built on getting this kind of reconstruction right. Where the noise creeps in is the headline shorthand. Life began twice, which conjures two separate sparks of life from dead matter when the actual claim is about one shared ancestor finishing its transition to full independence on two separate occasions. Get the framing right and this is one of the more interesting evolutionary stories of the year. Get it wrong and you walk away thinking scientists found a second genesis. Which is not what happened. Hold both halves at once. Real evidence. Overreaching headline. Subscribe for more stories where the study is solid and the summary of it is where things go sideways. Signal from the noise. Every week.